Syrian army units continue to target terrorist dens, establishing full control on Jazal oil field in Homs countryside and Dureen mountain in Latakia countryside. And Syria's UN envoy criticizes Western countries, mainly the US, for their double standard policies and support of terrorism. The delegation of the Syrian Arab community in Kuwait visits the wounded soldiers in Yusuf al-Azma hospital in Damascus. Good afternoon, this is News in English from the Syrian Arab television in Damascus. In Hama, eastern countryside in central Syria, the Syrian Arab Army Air Force carried out an operation destroying a convoy including tens of combat vehicles in Al-Hammada Omar area, which led to the killing of terrorist Deeb Hadajin al-Ataibi, who was nicknamed as Abi Ammar al-Jazrawi and was one of the main prominent ISIS terrorist organization leaders in the central region of Syria and one of the most prominent military officials in the terrorist organization. Military units of the Syrian army and armed forces established full control on Jazal oil field in Homs countryside, killing tens of terrorists and destroying their weapons and confiscating amounts of arms and ammunition. The last gathering of ISIS terrorists in Jazal oil field was destroyed. Another army unit destroyed a den for Jabhat al-Nusra, Nusra Front terrorist organization in al-San, which is located in Talbisa area in Homs northern countryside, also in central Syria. The army thwarted a terrorist attempt to detonate 10 explosive devices they had earlier planted in an area located 40 kilometers east of Palmyra city in the countryside of Homs. In cooperation with the authorities and the competent bodies, the Syrian army successfully defused the devices, which weighed 25 to 30 kilograms each. Earlier 10 explosive devices placed inside water channels and under bridges in eastern Palmyra were dismantled. In Zamalka, in Damascus countryside, the Syrian army destroyed a warehouse used by terrorists to store weapons and ammunition near al-Radwan mosque. A number of non-Syrian terrorists belonging to al-Nusra Front were also killed during the operation. Going to Latakia and Latakia countryside, several terrorists were killed or wounded when Syrian army units targeted their gatherings in Salma, Kafr Dilbe and Marj Khoucha. Earlier, army units established full control over Dureen mountain. The Syrian army established full control over al-Harrat village in Tel Asfar in the northeastern countryside of southern Suwaida city. The village came into the army's hands after soldiers eliminated numbers of terrorists. A number of explosive devices and mines left behind by the terrorists were dismantled. Going to Iraq, where Iraqi sources emphasized that freeing Ad-Dur town in Saladin governorate and eliminating tens of ISIS terrorists that took place earlier this week. The source added that distress calls from ISIS terrorists have been monitored from Tikrit, which confirms the lack of gear and fuel, while hospitals witness an overcrowding with ISIS injuries and dead terrorists due to the Iraqi army airstrikes in Salahuddin governorate, whereas in Nainawa, ISIS gangs have destroyed the Assyrian city of Nimrud and stolen its artifacts. Syria's permanent representative to the United Nations, Dr. Bashar al-Jaafari, said that the interest of some countries don't depend on practicing the needed efforts to reach a peaceful solution to the crisis in Syria, but they resort to using all available mechanisms at the United Nations to find pretexts to continue their aggression on Syria's sovereignty. Al-Jaafari was speaking at a press statement following a United Nations Security Council session where it adopted a resolution condemning the use of chlorine gas by any side in Syria, with 14 countries voting in favor of the resolution and the abstention of Venezuela. Al-Jaafari added that the interpositions of the United States Britain and France, representatives at the session following the adoption of the resolution, reflects the bad intentions of these countries who submitted this resolution and remind us with the gift presented to the Iraqi people that led to the invasion and destruction of Iraq under the so-called weapons of mass destruction program. He pointed out to some attempts to foil the mission of the United Nations Special Envoy to Syria, Staffan de Mistura, as the terrorists of the so-called moderate opposition rejected his initiative to freeze fighting in Aleppo, which serves the interests of some Western governments that offer weapons to them. He criticized Western countries, mainly the United States, of their double standards, policies towards the Middle East issues and some regions in the world, asserting that politicizing these issues will not help the international community carrying out the process of destroying weapons of mass destruction.
They gave this information outside of Syria, and they are all military armed terrorist groups. Definitely, they will not witness in favor of the Syrian government. They will witness in favor of their handlers and masters. Concerning the reports of the fact-finding mission, we would like to emphasize the following. The mission was not professional, neither impartial, and it flagrantly violated its mandate, especially when it suspiciously interviewed unknown or imagined individuals or those selected by the armed groups in order to falsify the real story of what happened in Kafar Zita, where the chlorine gas was used, and Al-Tamania and Talmanas.
In our local news, People's Assembly Speaker Mohammad Jihad Laham discussed with Democratic Korea's Deputy Foreign Minister Sin Hwang Chwal bilateral relations and parliamentary cooperation between the two countries. Chwal stressed that Syria is capable, with its leadership and people, in achieving victories against Takfiri terrorists, renewing his assertion over his country's support for the Syrian people, steadfastness in facing the terrorist war that is waged against them. Al-Laham expressed his appreciation to the Korean stances that support the Syrian people in its war against terrorism. For his part, Prime Minister Dr. Wael Halaqi stressed during a meeting with Democratic Korea's Deputy Foreign Minister Sin Hwang Chwal and the accompanying delegation that Syria and Democratic Korea are in the same trench, confronting the Zionist international imperialism and the American hegemony over their nations. Al-Halaqi stressed that Syria is going on in its war against terrorism until peace and security prevail all over Syria. For his part, Democratic Korea's Deputy Foreign Minister expressed his country's keenness in finding means of cooperation between the two countries. As Deputy Prime Minister, Foreign and Expatriates Minister Walid al-Muallim discussed with Democratic Korea's Deputy Foreign Minister Sin Hwang Chwal and the accompanying delegation deep friendship ties that gather the people of the two countries. Al-Muallim stressed that Syria is determined to fight terrorism and defend its people and interests, as he also stressed the necessity of enhancing bilateral relations and developing them in all domains. For his part, the head of Democratic Korea's delegation stressed the continued support of his country to Syria and its leadership in its war against terrorism, supported by the West and some Arab and regional countries. He also asserted that Democratic Korea will continue enhancing cooperation relations between the two countries. In tribute to their sacrifices for the sake of defending the homeland security and stability, a delegation from the Syrian community in Kuwait visited injured army personnel in Yusuf al-Azmi hospital in Damascus. Head of the delegation, Wael al-Nasser, said that Syrians inside and outside Syria are united and they believe in the victory of the Syrian army against terrorism, pledging to continue support for injured soldiers and expressing pride in the high morale of soldiers and their insistence to return to the battlefield once their wounds heal. For his part, Salah Sha'ir, a member of the delegation, hailed the sacrifices made by the Syrian soldiers on the battlefield, wishing the injured a swift recovery. Security forces of al-Saud regime continue their suppressing practices against the people of al-Awamiyya, east of the country, as they attacked the town with armored vehicles for chasing the writers, poets and the opposition activists. News reports said that these forces shot the citizens from inside the vehicle in Azara and Al-Dira, neighborhoods, causing sabotage without casualties. While they were chasing the Saudi writer Salman al-Farraj, the most wanted, noting that the al-Saud family have killed 27 people and arrested more than 1,000 others since the beginning of the demonstrations in 2011. With this, we conclude our news for today. Thank you for watching. For more details about Syria and the region, and to view this bulletin again, you can always visit our website in English, www.syriaonline.sy. Now, the latest business and market news with Nariman, but after a short break.
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. In order to evaluate the work situation in the industrial city of Syria, and in addition to facilitate investment for the infrastructure, a meeting was held by the administrative board of the industrial city to discuss all these and other related issues. The Ukrainian company Naftogaz transferred another small payment, about $15 million to the Russian company Gazprom, in exchange for 45.6 million cubic meters of gas, which will be supplied within the coming few days, whereas the Ukrainian Naftogaz has transferred the same payment to Gazprom at the end of the past month as a pre-batch of the supplement with the Russian gas company in March, enough only to cover the price of one-day gas supply according to the levels of usual pumping. Dealings of Damascus Stocks Exchange exceeded 8,680,000 Syrian pounds during the last week, reaching 66,887 stocks, while the DWX index registered about 1,246.58 points. Now over to some main currencies exchange rates according to the bulletin of the Central Bank of Syria. Ladies and gentlemen, this was our economic news for today. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.